Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to discuss some of the very important topic on AZ-104 Microsoft Azure Administrator exam. So this is series 1 and please note that this video does not contain any actual exam question and answers, and this video is for purely educational purpose only. The idea of this video is to gain knowledge to pass the exam successfully without brain dumps. So please try to understand the concept carefully and study this question and answer before sitting in the exam. So let's start. First question is from Manage Azure Identities and Governance, and the question is, explain conditional access policy in detail. So conditional access policies at their simplest are if-then statements. If an user wants to access a resource, then they must complete an action. Example, a payroll manager wants to access the payroll application and is required to perform multi-factor authentication to access it. Administrators are faced with two primary goals: empower users to be productive whenever and wherever, and the second one is protect the organization's asset. By using conditional access policies, we can apply the right access controls when needed to keep our organization secure and stay out of our users' way when not needed. Please follow the below link to create a conditional access policy that requires MFA for Azure management. I will definitely put the link in the description section of this video. The next question is, how do you manage multi-factor authentication provider? We cannot change the usage model per enabled user or per authentication after an MFA provider is created. If we purchased enough licenses to cover all as users that are enabled for MFA, we can delete the MFA provider altogether. If our MFA provider is not linked to an Azure AD tenant, or we link the new MFA provider to a different Azure AD tenant, user settings and configuration options are not transferred. Also, existing Azure MFA servers need to be reactivated using activation credentials generated through the MFA provider. The next question is also from Manage Azure Identities and Governance. The question is from PowerShell command for Azure AD Connect Sync Scheduler. It could be that we have an urgent change that must be synchronized immediately, which is why we need to manually run a cycle. If we need to manually run a sync cycle, then from PowerShell we have to execute the command. The command will be start-AD sync cycle space policy type space delta. To initiate a full sync cycle, we have to run the command start-AD sync cycle space hyphen policy type space initial from a PowerShell prompt. Running a full sync cycle can be very time consuming. You have to keep that in mind. The next question is from Deploy and Manage Azure Compute Resources. So, how do you organize Azure resources? The answer is, we can apply tags to our Azure resources, resource groups and subscription to logically organize them into a taxonomy. Each tag consists of a name and a value pair. For example, we can apply the name environment and the value production to all the resources in production. What is the Azure CLI command to create virtual machine? I will definitely put this command in the description section of this video. The command will be az group create --name my resource group automate --location East US. The next question is also from deploy and manage Azure Compute Resources, and the question is, what are the ways you can export ARM template? So there are two ways to export a template. Export from resource group or resource. This option generates a new template from existing resources. The exported template is a snapshot of the current state of the resource group. We can export an entire resource group or specific resources within that resource group. Second one is save from history. This option retrieves an exact copy of a template used for deployment. We specify the deployment from the deployment history. The next question is also from deploy and manage Azure Compute Resources. So how do you resize a VM which is in availability set? This is very important question. And the answer is, if my VM or VMs are deployed using the resource manager ARM deployment model and we need to change to a size which requires different hardware, then we can resize VMs by first stopping our VM, selecting a new VM size and then restarting the VM. If the VM we wish to resize is part of an availability set, then we must stop all VMs in the availability set before changing the size of any VM in the availability set. The reason all VMs in the availability set must be stopped before performing the resize operation to a size that requires different hardware is that all running VMs in the availability set must be using the same physical hardware cluster. Therefore, if a change of physical hardware cluster is required to change the VM size, then all VMs must be first stopped and then restarted one by one to a different physical hardware cluster. I hope you have understood the concept. The next question is, how do you availability sets work? Each virtual machine in our availability set is assigned an update domain and a fault domain by the underlying Azure platform. Each availability set can be configured with up to 3 fault domains and 20 update domains. Update domains indicate groups of virtual machines and underlying physical hardware that can be rebooted at the same time. When more than 5 virtual machines are configured within a single availability set with 5 update domains, the 6th virtual machine is placed into a same update domain as the first virtual machine, the 7th in the same update domain as the second virtual machine, and so on. The order of update domains being rebooted may not proceed sequentially during planned maintenance, but only one update domain is rebooted at a time. A rebooted update domain is given 30 minutes to recover before maintenance is initiated on a different update domain. Fault domains define the group of virtual machines that share a common power source and network switch. By default, the virtual machines configured within our availability set are separated across up to 3 fault domains. While placing our virtual machines into an availability set does not protect our application from operating system or application specific failures, it does limit the impact of potential physical hardware failures, network outages, or power interruptions. I have already created a video on availability set, fault domains and update domains. Please do watch the video. We have also demo how to create the availability set, and I have explained in detail how availability set, fault domains and update domains works. Let's go to the next question. Next question is from implement and manage storage. What is LRS? Locally redundant storage. LRS replicates our data 3 times within a single data center in the primary region. LRS provides at least 99.9% 11.9% durability of objects over a given year. LRS is the lowest cost redundancy option and offers the least durability compared to other options. LRS protects our data against server rack and drive failures. However, if a disaster such as fire or flooding occurs within the data center, all replicas of a storage account using LRS may be lost or unrecoverable. What is GRS? Geo Redundant Storage (GRS) copies our data synchronously 3 times within a single physical location in the primary region using LRS. It then copies our data asynchronously to a single physical location in the secondary region. Within the secondary region, our data is copied synchronously 3 times using LRS. What is ZRS or ZRS? Zone Redundant Storage. ZRS replicates our Azure storage data synchronously across 3 Azure availability zones in the primary region. Each availability zone is a separate physical location with independent power, cooling, and networking. ZRS offers durability for Azure storage data objects of at least 99.129% over a given year. With ZRS, our data is still accessible for both read and write operations even if a zone becomes unavailable. If a zone becomes unavailable, Azure undertakes networking updates such as DNS repointing. These updates may affect our application if we access data before the updates have completed. When designing applications for ZRS, follow practices for transient fault handling, including implementing retry policies with exponential backoff. A write request to a storage account that is using ZRS happens synchronously. The write operation returns successfully only after the data is written to all replicas across the 3 availability zones. Microsoft recommends using ZRS in the primary region for scenarios that require high availability. ZRS is also recommended for restricting replication of data to within a country or region to meet data governance requirements. Next question is from Implement and Manage Storage also. How do you detach a data disk which is attached to a VM? We can hot remove a data disk using PowerShell and from the portal, but make sure nothing is actively using the disk before detaching it from the VM. The disk stays in storage but is no longer attached to a virtual machine. The disk is not deleted. The next question is from Deploy and Manage Azure Compute Resources. The question is, how do you integrate ARM template to a Azure Key Vault? Instead of putting a secure value like a password directly in your template or parameter file, we can retrieve the value from an Azure Key Vault during a deployment. We retrieve the value by referencing the Key Vault and secret in your parameter file. The value is never exposed because you only reference its Key Vault ID. The access policies are not needed if the user is deploying a template that retrieves a secret. Add a user to the access policies only if the user needs to work directly with the secrets. The user who deploys the template must have the Microsoft.keyvault/vault/deploy/action permission for the scope of the resource group and Key Vault. By checking this access, Azure Resource Manager prevents an unapproved user from accessing the secret by passing in the resource ID for the Key Vault. You can grant deployment access to users without granting write access to the secrets. The owner and contributor roles both grant this access. If we created the Key Vault, we are the owner and have the permission. For other users, grant the Microsoft.keyvault /vaults/deploy/action permission. Next question is how to add a custom script to Windows setup. Setupcomplete.cmd and errorhandler.cmd are custom scripts that run during or after the Windows setup process. They can be used to install applications or run other tasks by using CS script or WScript scripts. WinDIR setup scripts setupcomplete.cmd. This is the location. This script runs with local system permissions and starts immediately after the user sees the desktop. This setting is disabled when using OEM product keys, except on enterprise editions and Windows Server operating systems. WinDIR setup scripts errorhandler.cmd. This script runs automatically when setup encounters a fatal error. It runs with local system permission. We can't reboot the system and resume running setupcomplete.cmd. We should not reboot the system by adding a command such as shutdown -r. This will put the system in a bad state. Next question is from Monitor and Backup Azure Resources. How do you set up disaster recovery for on-premises Hyper-V VMs? First, we have to prepare Azure. The steps will be verify that the Azure account has replication permissions. Second one is create a recovery services vault. A vault holds metadata and configuration information for VMs and other replication components. Third is set up an Azure Virtual Network VNet. When Azure VMs are created after failover, they are joined to this network. Next is prepare on-premises Hyper-V servers. First step is review Hyper-V requirements and VMM requirements. If your Hyper-V hosts are managed by System Center VMM, Virtual Machine Manager, prepare VMM if applicable. Then verify internet access to Azure locations. Then prepare VMs so that you can access them after failover to Azure. Then set up replication of Hyper-V VMs. First step is select your replication source and target. Next is set up the source replication environment including on-premises site recovery components and the target replication environment. Third one is create a replication policy. Fourth one is enable replication for a VM. Next question is from Configure and Manage Virtual Networking. Explain point-to-site VPN routing. So, P2S point-to-site VPN routing behavior is dependent on the client OS, the protocol used for the VPN connection, and how the virtual networks VNets are connected to each other. Azure currently supports two protocols for remote access, that is IKEv2 and SSTP. IKEv2 is supported on many client operating systems including Windows, Linux, Mac OS, Android and iOS. SSTP is only supported on Windows. If you make a change to the topology of your network and have Windows VPN clients, the VPN client package for Windows clients must be downloaded and installed again in order for the changes to be applied to the client. Next question is explain point-to-site VPN gateway. A point-to-site P2S VPN gateway connection lets us create a secure connection to our virtual network from an individual client computer. A P2S connection is established by starting it from the client computer. This solution is useful for telecommuters who want to connect to Azure VNets or on-premises data centers from a remote location, such as from home or a conference. Next question is also from Configure and Manage Virtual Networking. So configure load balancer and availability group listener on SQL Server VM. How do you configure the load balancer and availability group listener on SQL Server VM? So we have to follow some steps. An availability group requires a load balancer when the SQL Server instances are on Azure virtual machines. The load balancer stores the IP address for the availability group listener. If an availability group spans multiple regions, each region needs a load balancer. We need to have a SQL Server always on availability group deployed in Azure VMs that are running with Resource Manager. Both SQL Server virtual machines must belong to the same availability set. We can use the Microsoft template to automatically create the availability group in Resource Manager. This template automatically creates an internal load balancer for us. Do the following steps. First, in the Azure portal, create the load balancer and configure the IP address. Second, configure the backend pool. Only add the primary IP address of the VM. Do not add any secondary IP addresses. Specify the availability set that the SQL Server virtual machines belongs to. Select the two virtual machines that host the SQL Server instances in the availability group. Azure updates the settings for the backend address pool. The next is, third point is, create the probe. You can use any available port, for example 59999. Make sure that the port you specify is open on the firewall of both SQL Server instances. Both instances require an inbound rule for the TCP port that you use. Fourth is, set the load balancing rules. Port 1433, backend port 1433. This value is ignored because this rule uses floating IP. Direct server return, that should be enabled. Please note, if our SQL Server instances are in two separate regions, we need to repeat the steps in the other region. Each region requires a load balancer. Next step is, configure the cluster to use the load balancer IP address. For this, first, create the availability group listener on the failover cluster. Second, bring the listener online. This is the end of series 1. I hope this video was useful. Please study the notes that I have created in this video, and I am sure that definitely you will succeed in the exam. I will definitely upload the remaining series on AZ104 Azure Administrator exam. Thank you for watching this video, and please watch all the videos that I am going to upload in few days. Thank you.